And now, your go-to source for year-round fantasy hockey advice, DFS, and betting coverage. This is NHL Fantasy on Ice, presented by Skip, the official food delivery app of the NHL.
The Four Nations is down to two nations as the U.S. and Canada set the tango for the championship on Thursday night. Brought to you by our good friends over at Skip. It's time for another episode of NHL Fantasy on Ice. Four Nations bonus podcast for you folks. Nick Alberga, Jake Hahn, and Pete Jensen with you. What's going on, Jakey?
A podcast divided, Nick. We've got two Canadians, two Americans. I don't know if this podcast is going to start like the game from Saturday. Like I take Petey, you take producer Bobby. I don't know. But either way, this episode is brought to you by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip.
USA! 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 Let's go!
If me and producer Bob were to go off the opening draw, it'd be a one-punch just finished. Nights out Aaron Asham, okay, from back in the day. But great to do this. Petey, how you feeling about this game on Thursday, bud?
I mean, Quinn Hughes is going to Boston. We'll just leave it at that. We don't know if he's going to be playing. I hope personally to see Quinn Hughes, who you could make the argument is just as good as Cale Makar. I hope to see him play in the game somehow, some way.
Well, we made up this tournament kind of on the fly, guys, over the last year or so, and it's gone well. I'm loving it. Look, any international hockey we can get, it's been very entertaining. I think we were all enamored by the start of that game on Saturday. If we can make up a tournament on the fly, we can make up some rules on the fly. So let's get Quinn Hughes in this game. I want someone from Canada to step up and say, no, let him play. We want the best players available. Let's go. Bring them on. So as a proud Canadian, guys, I want Quinn Hughes in the game. I want to see the best players playing on the ice. Let the man play. Let's go.
Jake, jokes aside, we got a slobber knocker, to quote the great Jim Ross on Saturday night. But now you insert Cale Makar, and potentially, who knows what can transpire over the next couple of days, maybe a Quinn Hughes. But like, this is all the buildings to be an electric atmosphere, TD Garden in Boston, Canada, US. It's exactly what we wanted, no?
It's exactly what we wanted. You couldn't have said it better. I think it was almost in the script to start, right? Okay, Canada, US, we're going to get a little taste. Honestly, I thought Sweden and Finland did put up a great showing, though. Finland, we knew that roster was going to be pretty hampered on the back end, and they found a way to win a game. And look, Sweden didn't lose a game in regulation the whole tournament and somehow doesn't find themselves in the finals. So it's kind of a tough break, I thought, for the Swedes, but this is what everybody wants to see. It's Canada, US. We set the table with that game on Saturday. Nick, I don't know if you have any general thoughts on the game. I think everybody is enamored with what happened again at the start of that game, but I actually felt like the second and third periods a little boring, and that was mostly to do with the US and how great they played defensively. It felt like there was no space out there for the Canadian players whatsoever.
Well, producer Bob's boy, Chris Mad Dog Russo, was not a big fan of the fighting. He thought it was staged, right? So I thought it was just unbelievable. I mean, exactly what you want from these two nations, considering how long it's been since they got together on the national stage. But I'm right there with you. I thought Connor Hellebuyck's been the big story. Like, we'll get into it a bit later on, but turning MVP options. In my world, there's three guys. Two are Canadian and one's American, and it's more so because some guys in the States haven't played enough. Like, you look at Matthew Tkachuk, he's had a good tournament, but how do you quantify that over like a 3-game sample size where it's like been all about Connor Hellebuyck to me? Like, he's been so good in this tournament again, Jake.
Okay, well, I'll get this out there right now, Nick, because I was going to mention it in the On the Money segment, but I did sprinkle a little action on Connor McDavid 11-1 before the game against Finland for MVP, thinking, okay, Canada should win this game, and I feel like he's going to do something in the game against Finland. So obviously the odds have shifted, and maybe me, you, and Pete can toss that around in the On the Money, but it does feel like we're narrowing the board. I could see a path where Nathan MacKinnon could maybe win it with a big game for Canada, but I think the players that could win it on the U.S. side are pretty small. It feels like Connor Hellebuyck. Jake Gensel's had a really nice tournament, so if he has a big moment, and that's probably what it's going to take, right, Nick? In a situation like this where we're dealing with such a small sample size, whoever scores that big goal in the championship game could end up running away with the MVP.
And maybe that's Zach Werenski, Pete. I mean, maybe he's the guy who could step up, right? Who would have prognosticated this? Zach Werenski has the most points on Team USA, 5 points through, 3 games here?
Right, and he's tied with Sidney Crosby for the tournament lead, and I'm looking as of right now on Bet365, plus 2,200, about 8th or 9th on the odds board for MVP. I mean, what if Quinn Hughes does not play and Zach Werenski has like a 2 or 3 point game, seals the deal, leads the tournament in scoring? He could win MVP. It could happen, right?
Definitely. And I think in general, the goaltending is a big thing I'm looking at here in the final. You have Connor Hellebuck, a 1 GA, 957 save percentage. He's been as advertised. Then you have Jordan Binnington, who we all prognosticated this coming into this tournament about Canada's crease and how it could be volatile, what it has been, Jake. 2-1-0, 2.6, and 8.92. I would think if Binnington can play up to maybe even 900, I think Canada's got a really, really good shot because I expect a better effort. But to me, it's everything about goaltending in this game.
It doesn't feel like Hellebuck has been truly tested yet in this tournament. I don't know if that's going to change on Thursday, and that's full credit to the U.S. defense. Like, they've really limited the high danger chances against Connor Hellebuck. Kind of reminds me, maybe not quite to the extent, Nick, but of that 2014 Canadian Olympic team that was just so dominant. And Carey Price was the goaltender, but he basically was just sitting back there. He could have knitted a sweater during the game because they didn't allow anything. So I probably wouldn't put the American blue line quite on that tier, and the sample size is small, but I think they're making it easy on Hellebuck, and we've only seen him play 2 games. If Canada can break through and finally test him, maybe that swings things a little bit. And I think it's been up and down, in my opinion, for Jordan Binnington. He's come up with some big saves. He's had some goals you'd probably say he'd like to have back. So mixed bag on Binnington, but if he could just allow 1 or 2, I think he gives Canada a very legit shot on Thursday.
The wait's going to be excruciating for Thursday night, but I think it's good news for the Americans, Pete, because of all the injuries. I mean, we'll make of it what we will. Obviously, the game against Sweden didn't matter that much, but a couple guys banged up, and it sounds like all of them are going to go, with exception of Charlie McAvoy. But are we not making enough about this storyline with the Americans and the injuries?
It's a fair point. They've done an incredible job. And Jake Gensel especially. He might be my biggest surprise of the tournament. You knew he was an elite goal scorer, but you also knew going into it that he was going to be right 4th, 5th, 6th on the pecking order. As much as Dylan Larkin started the tournament on a 3rd or 4th line role, you knew at any moment, like, a guy goes into a drought, and then Jake Gensel ends up in the bottom 6. So the fact that he has produced through and through, had his biggest game of the tournament against Canada, and now is sitting here, proving that he's a standalone entity. He's not just a product of his line mates.
Nick, I wanted to ask you, has this tournament, even though it's been such a small sample size, affected or maybe solidified your opinion on certain players? Because a couple of these games have felt playoff style, right? And I think we're just finding out more of what we already knew about certain guys. And, not to throw shade, but Elias Pettersson, a rough tournament, a guy that struggled in the playoffs last year. Mitch Marner, outside of a 3-on-3 overtime goal, feels like he struggled at times as well. And other players that we expect to step up in these big moments have been the best players in these tournament. So are you reading anything into that we can relate back to the NHL?
No, the only thing I learned is I got to cancel my X account and never tweet again, because there's some people out there who think Mitch Marner's been excellent in this tournament, and I will say I was underwhelmed all this lead up to Miller against Pettersson. I don't think they even looked in each other's direction, Jakey. But to answer your question, I haven't been crazy about the Pettersson file all season long. It concerns me from the Vancouver perspective. Again, 11.6 sheets a year. You don't know what Pettersson you're going to get game in and game out. The Marner front's different. In the regular season, there was time and space and people making a lot of the OT winner and 3-on-3 against Sweden. Like, he's going to produce. If I'm trying to weigh the two options, the two files right now, Pete, it's obviously I'm in favor of Mitch Marner. Pettersson, I just don't know what I'm going to get when he gets back here to the Vancouver Canucks.
And just to be fair, there are other guys that have underperformed. Austin Matthews hasn't performed up to snuff. I know he missed the last game because of an injury. Sounds like he's good to go for Thursday. That's good news. Mika Zibanejad, my goodness, he's had a rough season, and then he could have ended both of those games that Sweden won that lost in overtime, right? He had a chance against Binnington. He made an amazing save in the first game, and then the next game he had another really good opportunity and couldn't deliver. So now he goes back to the Rangers, and I don't know how you recover from that, but hopefully he does, I guess.
I'm just saying, I would be a little bit concerned if I was a Canucks fan. And again, this is a very small sample size of this tournament, but it kind of solidifies what at least I already thought about these players. Nick, JT Miller's dropping the mitts with Colton Parayko, and he's willing to, you're going to lose that fight 100 times out of 100. Yeah. It's just a mismatch, but I love that, right? That's the kind of hockey you want come playoff time. And then you see Elias Pettersson out on the perimeter, basically playing 10 minutes for Sweden in big games. So that would concern me that maybe we let the better player, the more playoff caliber player, get away. I don't know. I wouldn't be loving this if I was a Canucks fan right now.
Hey, I'm tired of talking about the negativity. Let's talk some positives here, boys. X factors, sleepers, like Pete Jensen's favorite topic point here. So we'll start with you, Petey. Who do you like?
Well, the sleeper or the X factor for Canada has to be Binnington, right? He's played every game. I thought it was going to be Hill, worked into the mix, not so fast. Jordan Binnington is leading the tournament in high danger saves, edge stats alert with 26 in 3 games. He also has the best high danger save percentage at 963, even better than Connor Hellebuck at 941. That's a surprise to me, and I think that we know Hellebuck's outstanding. I don't think he's going to falter. If Binnington lets the floodgates open in this monumental spot, it could be over. So that's my X factor.
We got to locate our friends and our guy Drew Lyon at Bet365. Over under how many times they mentioned Game 7 against the Boston Bruins for Binnington in the final here, Jake, on Thursday. I'm going to say 72. So
Okay, well, maybe I'll take the under. Maybe they get it out of the way early and they just move on. There's going to be a lot to talk about in that game. But, Nick, I'll give you Jake Hahn's X Factor player to watch on Thursday night, Matt Boldy of the American side. I just have a feeling watching him play in that game against Sweden, I know it was a meaningless game, but they needed guys to step up in that lineup. If he can get a little more ice time, maybe find himself a decent line combo. Again, we have no idea what lineups are going to look like, and there's a lot of question marks with that American team. Him and Dylan Larkin together, I thought in that Swedish game worked out quite well. So maybe that's something that they can take into Thursday night. And I love his lethal finishing ability. We know we've seen it in the NHL now for a couple years. Matt Boldy is my X factor on Thursday.
Look, I got to concur with Petey because I think everything stems upon the goaltending for Canada. Can you get adequate enough goaltending from Jordan Binnington? If you can, I think I give them a legitimate shot. And let's not forget, Connor Hellebuck, for as great of a career as he's had, he's going to win a second consecutive Vezina Trophy. He's got a lot of heat for his production in big games and in the Stanley Cup playoffs specifically. So, this is a sneaky big game for Connor Hellebuck as well here, Jake.
It is. These are the types of legacy games. I've even heard Jack Eichel talk about it as well. This feels like the biggest game of his career. And this is a guy that's won a Stanley Cup, right? And has played in so many big games. So that just tells you how much these players care and what kind of game we're gonna see on Thursday night, right? The intensity level. I think Saturday was just a starter kit for what we are going to see on Thursday. So all these guys can kind of have their big moment that when they're retired 10, 15 years down the road, we'll look back, wow, that Hellebuck shutout in the gold medal game or that Connor McDavid game-winning goal. These are the types of build your legacy moments for these top players.
Do you think this game gets a little more high scoring than the last one? Canada makes some adjustments. They have Cale Makar in the lineup for sure. Again, we don't know about Quinn Hughes at the moment, but if it gets higher scoring, who does it benefit? I think maybe a guy like Jack Hughes. He's got 10 shots on goal, no goals in his first 3 games, but curious if you guys are leaning towards more the defensive battle or the over here.
I still have to go with the under. I know what you're saying because there's so much firepower and we expect more from McDavid and McKinnon and Crosby, and you look at the guns in the States and you can make a simple case as to why you like that over 5.5 number. But this is for all the marbles. I think there's going to be a feel-out process. I don't even know if there's going to be a scrap in this game. You know you're going to get your probable best from Connor Hellebuck. I think Canada's got to be a bit tighter defensively, and that's why I'm leaning towards sort of the under in this game. But I think Pete makes a fair point, Jake, where you look at some of the guns on this ice and how quiet they've been, right? A lot of these guys you have to remember are stars on their NHL teams, and now they're on their Olympic squads, and it's they've been held in check, but for how long is the question?
So it's probably going to come down to how the game is called, guys. We talk about this a lot at playoff time in the NHL, and I would have to think the whistles are going to get put away for this one. Even for the most part in this tournament, we've seen the whistles get put away. We haven't really seen too many penalty-heavy games. So if on the chance we do see a bunch of power plays and you get these star guys out there on the ice, then yeah, I think it could be higher scoring. But if it's 1 penalty, 2 penalties aside, I think we're looking at a pretty low-scoring game. And one thing to keep in mind, this could mean absolutely nothing, but all 3 games that the United States have played, the team that has scored first in that game has actually lost. The U.S. getting scored on first in their first 2 games against Finland and Canada. They end up winning those games. They score first against Sweden. Probably meaningless, but something to keep an eye on going into this game.
Heard it here first. The first goal does not matter. Some players I'm looking forward to seeing on Thursday night, guys, who I think could be X factors / sleepers. On Canada's side, Sam Reinhart. I don't know if it's being made a bigger story, but John Cooper changing the lines up for Canada. You got Reinhardt on the top line's been unbelievable. Braden Point on line 2 with Connor McDavid. Brad Marchand in Boston. I love that narrative, right? He's the captain of the Boston Bruins. He's had a quiet tournament, had a couple of chances in the first game. I would look at him. I talked about Braden Point. And why not Mitch Marner? Maybe exercising those demons in Boston at the Garden. He struggled in this tournament, played under 13 minutes last game, Jake.
I think at the end of the day, too, and obviously a lot of these games can sometimes be decided by that third line or fourth liner. I mentioned Matt Boldy maybe stepping up for the American side. At the end of the day, it's probably going to be won and lost from the top players. Like I think Canada is just going to throw McDavid and McKinnon out there as much as possible. And I think you could look at the American side and say maybe, assuming everybody's healthy, their group of forwards is a little deeper than what Canada has right now. And there's some players that are maybe aging out a bit or could be banged up as well on the Canadian side. But really, that's what it comes down to for me, Nick. I know it seems obvious, but McDavid and McKinnon, we saw them step up in that must-win game against Finland on Monday afternoon. It's probably going to come down to those guys. If they can have those big moments, Canada wins. If not, I think the U.S. wins it pretty easy on Thursday.
On the American side, Pete, some guys I'm looking at. Dylan Larkin, we've talked about his emergence this tournament. Kyle Connor's been up and down. Brock Faber, you talk about guys maybe being elevated with Charlie McAvoy not playing here in the final. And Jack Eichel. But it's sort of unique picking X factors and sleepers in a game like this with so many All-Stars, Pete.
It feels like an all-star game, only better, right? All these matchups so far. It's been a lot of fun to watch. I will go back to what I said on the previous show about two players. Braden Point is the finisher, ice in his veins. You can get him plus 260 to score an anytime goal in the championship game. I like that. He scored the other day. And then Brady Tkachuk, right, has never played a Stanley Cup playoff game. I know we'll get to more in the betting segment, but Brady Tkachuk is the heart and soul of the United States right now.
I thought we had a segment on the money devoted to this sort of conversation. Petey's jumping the gun in a big way. We'll get to that segment soon enough, but there's a segment devoted for the wagering talk. So
well, to be honest, I mean, this is a full
ready?
preview. There's going to be some sprinkling action all over the place, but let's get into that segment. It's time for On the Money, brought to you by Bet365. It's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 or older. Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you or someone you know has concerns about gambling, visit connectsontario.ca. Where do you want to start this conversation, Producer Bob?
I want to start at thanking Drew Lyon, my man Drew Lyon over at Bet365, one of the greats. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, Drew. Thank you for a beautiful read there, Nick. And then I'll let you three do the Golden State Warriors share the ball here. Let's hear all the angles. I want them all. Let's go.
Yeah, so this is going to be tough, obviously, because we've got Peter's an American. Me and Jake are Canadian. I don't know how you guys read the line in the first game. I went on VSiN, actually, and I picked the United States to win that game. I'm sorry, Pete. I'm picking Canada. I think they answer the bell here. I think it's so hard for these two nations to beat each other twice, but maybe you feel differently.
I'm not so sold on the U.S. winning this game. I just think that Brady Tkachuk is going to be heavily involved. He is deemed healthy, playing with his brother. That's the Bash brothers right now. You can get Brady Tkachuk for plus 130 to have a point compared to Matthew, who's plus 100. So I like that value. And then also plus 300 to get Brady Tkachuk to score a goal. He did score 2 goals in the one game, right? They both scored 2 goals in that one game. So really impressive what they've been able to do any given game in this tournament when healthy.
I don't think I'm going to take too much away from that Saturday game. I think this game is going to be a little bit different. And I think Canada's maybe found a little bit more confidence. And that's why I am leaning towards the Canadian side. I mean, this is a true pick'em, guys. So, I mean, we're splitting hairs between these two sides. And I am obviously biased, like producer Bobby alluded to. And, you know, we've got 2 Canadians, 2 Americans on this podcast. So I'm going to roll with the Canadian side, Nick, but I don't have a ton of confidence in it either way. Obviously, that first goal is going to matter. And I do think we get a relatively lower scoring game. I mean, if we get an early goal, I'm going to be looking to maybe back the live under, kind of like what we saw on Saturday. We had a couple goals early in the first period. I think we could see that something like that again, and then things really tighten up when you get into the nitty gritty of the game.
I like it. And ideally, when you bet on games like this, I think you want to create a narrative in your head of how it's going to play out. Like, for example, if you like the States, like with Pete, you ride the Tkachuks, you ride the big boys, you ride Hellebuck. I would look at that saves prop. We talked about it earlier. After the commotion of the first 10 minutes of the first game on Saturday, very quiet. That was a big story for me, was the American defense. Jacob Slavin was unbelievable in that hockey game. I expect a bit more, like throwing everything but the kitchen sink from Canada. No McAvoy, who I thought was great in the tournament prior to getting hurt. So maybe the Hellebuck saves prop. And the Canadian narrative is pretty simple. Like, we saw it against Finland. It's not a magic formula or anything. Like, Connor McDavid over 1.5, I would look at that. And I'm going to ride Brad Marchand. I mentioned this. Brad Marchand, anytime goal, Pete, is what I'm playing here.
I like it. I also like the three-way angle. There were a bunch of games in this tournament that went to overtime. There were a bunch where I was like, oh, getting on the three-way money line would have been crazy and would have paid off here. So, again, for this game to go to overtime, you can get plus 300 on Bet365. I like that angle. Sit back and watch the drama unfold. This is as good a theater as the sport of hockey, I think, could ever imagine. And that's what we're going to get. Maybe double the ratings. That's what I'm hoping for on Thursday night.
Well, I'm thinking we're going quadruple the ratings because I heard through a source of mine, close source, boots on the ground, we got Justin Trudeau and Donald Trump set to be in the building in Boston. So strap in, folks.
No way.
It's going to be wild.
Why would Justin Trudeau be there?
wild.
He's not even the prime minister of our country.
I'm just telling you, he's the one that's going to be there representing the country because you don't have anyone else. It's going to be Trudeau and Trump, baby, in Boston. Strap in, Jake.
Well, I'm sure that'll spice things up, and everyone will be very quiet on social media about that appearance.
Yes,
I'm
yes.
totally sure. I wanted to get, and we alluded to this a little bit earlier, guys, any MVP takes, any value you could see maybe down the board, because this is a short tournament. Yes, we have a case to build, and okay, yeah, we're seeing the market kind of take shape, but someone could just have a monster game from the back of the board and go and steal the award. Like I mentioned, I do have Connor McDavid 11-1. I feel great about that number, but I could see McKinnon, I could see Crosby, maybe somebody else off the board. I know, Nick, I think you mentioned Werenski, or was it Pete?
Yeah.
I think Werenski on Bet365 right now, 22-1. Not a terrible number. I think this game would have to get high scoring. I feel like if it's lower scoring, they're just going to give it to Hellebuck.
Again, yeah, you're right. It's like building that case. If it's low scoring and the States win, it's Hellebuck's to lose. I think it's fascinating because the sample size is so small where you can make a legitimate case if somebody pops off and has like 2 goals and an assist or a hattie and like is a determining factor in this game. You can give it to them off the board. Like if it's Brock Nelson, why not? Like, we haven't seen enough games, Pete, where it's like that guy is legitimate. That's why we're having this conversation and we deem it wide open, right?
It's a fair point, right? Hat trick for Austin Matthews, and he wins the MVP. A lot can change in the blink of an eye in this tournament. I will say, I think my pre-tournament pick was the U.S. to win, but I would say that the best bet for MVP is Sidney Crosby at plus 500, because that guy goes out there, scores a goal, and Canada wins. You can almost book it, I think, with all due respect to McKinnon, Makar, and McDavid. That I would say Crosby would win the MVP.
Yeah.
If I didn't have the McDavid ticket right now, guys, I think I would maybe look to Nathan McKinnon if I like the Canadian side, just for a little bit bigger odds, 7-1 for Nate. He scores a couple goals in that game against Finland. If he scores again in the final, I think the goal scoring might push him a little bit over McDavid. Unfortunately, he was like 25-1 before that Finland game, so we missed the really juicy number on Nate, but a few options for Canada, whereas I do think we're a little bit more limited on the American side. If they win, feels like it's going to go the way of Connor Hellebuck.
I like the McKinnon angle. Crosby can't shoot, guys. I know he had the empty netter. I know he's got the vision. If he gets 3-4 assists, they give him the little legacy MVP, the whole thing. But I like McKinnon here because I think the dog is going to score some goals, and he just needs a couple and a nice little number from Jake. So that's where I'm going for MVP. What else we got?
I'll throw in a couple assist props here in Chris Meany's honor. So we'll go Cale Makar plus 125 for 1 assist, and then also Zach Werenski plus 150 for 1 assist. How is that possible? He has 5 assists in 3 games in the tournament, better than an assist per game. So maybe that's the angle for Zach Werenski because so many other guys are in the MVP mix.
And we should acknowledge that Meany was supposed to be on this show, but apparently he had a little couple raindrops hit the roof. The power went out in Canada because the infrastructure, God knows what's wrong with the infrastructure in Canada, right? I mean, this is the show where the states can really dog on the Canadians because there's a little rivalry here. But yeah, sorry, Meany. I mean, a couple raindrops shouldn't have you out of commission, so that's why he's not here.
No. To be clear, bad ice storm up in Canada, and I think Meany hasn't had power for almost 24 hours at this point. So hopefully he's all good.
Yeah, we just talk about narratives. Producer Bob builds his own narratives in his head here. I'll play off that. Narratives. Cale Makar didn't play in the first game. I think, it's weird to say, Jake, this guy's an X factor. He's the best defenseman on the planet. I like Makar to pick up at least a point in this game.
Yeah, well, and look, he was ready to play that game Monday. You see how important he is, and he's going to get every minute that he can handle on Thursday, especially if Quinn Hughes ends up playing the other way for the American side, which I think I want to see just as a hockey fan. So I like that angle, Nick. I think you can look to the shot prop market as well. We're seeing some big numbers in the shot prop market on guys that on their NHL teams, you don't quite get as big of a price. Now that's because they're playing a lesser role on a team like this. But I mentioned a guy like Matt Boldy. Maybe for 3 shots, you get a nice plus money number on Thursday. Dylan Larkin's another guy I think could get some sneaky minutes, and you get a pretty good line on. Again, a lot of this is going to depend on combinations. I know Pete mentioned Braden Point as well. I think another one to keep an eye on in the point and shot prop market as well.
Looking forward to Thursday night, boys. Can't say enough. Breaking news coming in from Bet365, where every nail-biting overtime win, breakaway, pick six, three-point shot, underdog win, buzzer beater, shootout, walk-off, and absolutely every play in between is amazing. From football to basketball and hockey to baseball, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 19 or older. Ontario only. Please play responsibly. If you or someone you know has concerns about gambling, visit connectsontario.ca.
It's never ordinary at Bet. Let me channel my Jesse Pinkman. It's never ordinary at Bet365, folks. Okay, thanks everyone for listening. This is a bonus episode brought to you by Skip. So phenomenal.
It was. What happened this week on NHL Unscripted, Bobby? We all want to know.
Oh, well, the guy who's calling the championship game, the great Sean McDonough, joined Jason and Adnan, and I think this Thursday we got Jeremy Piven and the great 5-year anniversary, I think right on the nose, David Ayers will be joining. Try to help me out here. Try to help Petey out, too. Try to help us out. We're all part of the same team.
Hell, help me out, too. Open for Max Scherzer of the Toronto Blue Jays, a guest on Leafs Morning Take at the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube. We're going to leave it at that. Enjoy the game on Thursday. Final talk, final call here to J-Con. What do you got to say?
Well, I was going to say, I was at that David Ayers game 5 years ago, Nick, and I'm actually going to the Toronto Maple Leafs versus the Carolina Hurricanes to see Mikko Rantanen on Saturday. So I don't know, if a little foreshadowing there. If it happened 5 years ago, could it happen again? Leafs and Canes, same two teams.
Wow, so you were at an emergency backup goalie game, Jake. That is like going to a perfect game in baseball, which I've been to one of them. San Francisco, Matt Cain. So I was at one, you were at. So wow, unbelievable. Okay, put a bow on it.
I'll be there on Saturday, Jake, and if you recall, I was a Leafs radio host for that game against Carolina. I was in the building as well. And thank you for bringing back memories, Producer Bob. That's Producer Bob Bender for Jake Con and Pete Jensen. I'm Nick Alberga. You've been listening to NHL Fantasy on Ice, delivered by Skip. Skip to the good part and get groceries, meals, and essentials delivered right to your door on Skip.